Hey everyone, it's Crash Knife Fight, and I'm back today with some tips to help you survive the mean streets of Washington, D.C. in the Division 2. I'm guessing if you are watching this that you've already bought the game, but if not, I highly recommend you pick it up because it is a hell of a lot of fun. So, what I want to offer today is a little advice on gear and weapon selection, navigating the PvE world, and provide a few tips on tactics to help you get through those tough firefights. Let's start by discussing some of the types of primary weapons you should use to build your loadout. If you are like me and spend a lot of time playing solo, you're going to want a loadout that works well in all situations and turns your agent into a one-man or woman army. Fortunately, the good people at Ubisoft and Massive Entertainment provide us with a fantastic selection and variety of guns, and I encourage you to try out all the ones you come across. As a matter of fact, once you recruit Charles Douglas to join your staff at the White House, you will have a gun range at your disposal to squeeze off as many rounds as you desire to learn all the characteristics of your weapons. That aside, when going it alone, there are some choices that are better than others. It's best to have a little diversity between your two primary weapons to cover various situations. In one slot, I try to equip either an assault or semi-automatic rifle with an ammo capacity in the range of 20 to 30 rounds, or a light machine gun, typically the M60 or M249, because those two have a standard higher ammo capacity than some of the other LMG offerings. What I'm looking for in this weapon is something that is effective up to a medium range that can dispatch at least a couple enemies without reloading. The second primary slot I devote to a shorter range weapon such as a shotgun or SMG. My sidearm is typically a last resort, and I have no real preference, but I try to avoid revolvers. Although they are quite powerful, the reload time is a little excessive. I'll come back to some other details as to why I choose these particular weapons, but let's move on to skills. Completing certain missions will reward you a skill point that will allow you to unlock one of 8 different gadgets at the White House. Just like the firearms, the gadgets offer some great variety, and you should try them all at some time. But if you are playing alone, there are a couple I feel that are more valuable than the others. First and foremost, the assault turret is indispensable when going solo. This version of the turret will help you pin down and eradicate the enemy and acquire and fire upon aggressors in a 360-degree arc. It's like having a robotic teammate that will always have your back. I'll discuss when and how to deploy the turret when I get to tactics, but one quick tip to keep in mind. If you clear out the enemy and your turret is still on the ground, make sure you destroy it by holding in the R1 button on your PS4 controller or whatever button you use on your controller or PC keyboard to deploy it. This will start the cooldown period and give you a quicker start on getting the turret ready for your next encounter. The next skill I suggest is the Chem Launcher with the Reinforcer mod. A quick tap of the button and the Chem Launcher will deploy a cloud of armor repairing chemicals at your feet. With a limited number of armor repair kits at your disposal, taking advantage of one of the skills with an armor repair mod will keep you from running through your kits during longer missions. But that is not the only benefit. Using an armor repair kit will take you out of the action for several seconds while your agent patches up damage, whereas deploying a skill with an armor repair mod will allow you to reload or continue to fire on the enemy while your armor repairs over time. The Chem Launcher will not completely repair fully depleted armor, however it does have multiple rounds, and proactively deploying a chem round before your armor gets too low will keep you in fighting form. So let's move on to navigating the streets of DC. Make sure you are taking your time and exploring the map as much as possible. Every section of the map is packed with discoverable items, loot, hidden areas, and more that you can easily miss simply running from mission to mission. Search for loot in corners and recesses around walls and buildings and around abandoned vehicles. Also, make sure you invest in the Discovery perk, which will reveal all the loot containers within a certain proximity of your agent for a short time after you donate supplies to friendly control points. Another reason to move deliberately around the city is to avoid running into a group of enemies on patrol or roaming. If you are not paying attention, you could wind up in the middle of a group of bad guys, putting yourself in a bad position to find cover and fight them off. It's always better to get the jump on them rather than the other way around. So avoid tunnel vision as you move through the streets and aim down sights once in a while to scope out the area ahead of you and try cutting out creative routes to your targets from time to time rather than follow the path provided by the game. When you're going to commit to an engagement, there are a few tactics you should always try to keep in mind. As you approach an area with enemies, do your best to do a little recon and assess the situation. Get eyes on as many enemies as you can. Move from cover to cover to avoid detection and try to get as many of the enemies into the effective range of your weapon, but not too close. If you get too close, you risk getting flanked. Do your best to keep all the enemies in front of you. Very often you will see enemies in close proximity to each other, so group them up and try to make these your first targets. Before opening fire, deploy your turret. Try to get the turret elevated like on a wall, car hood, or shipping container. The idea is to make sure it has the best line of sight possible against the enemy. Once you deploy the turret, pick your target and open fire. Try to dispatch the closest enemies first to avoid any of them flanking or rushing you. Once engaged, be mindful of your ammo status. Playing shooters over the years, I have gotten into a habit of reloading every chance I get, but the reload times on certain weapons in the Division 2 makes that tactic a little dangerous, especially with light machine guns. If you are using an LMG or other slow-loading weapon, make sure you have good cover and some distance between you and the closest enemy before reloading. Sometimes that will not be possible, and this is where the short-range weapon comes into play. If you get flanked or rushed while attempting to reload, switch over to your SMG or shotgun to take them out. Of course, this means keeping an eye on your minimap, which you should be doing anyway. The enemies in the Division 2 will incorporate a number of different tactics. Not only will they attempt to flank you, some will charge in to melee you or detonate some type of device. Enemy AI also uses the same variety of weapons, so expect to see shotguns, SMGs, assault rifles, all the way up to LMGs, mounted miniguns, and RPGs. In addition to these firearms, the enemy will use grenades or various types of unmanned aerial and ground vehicles in an attempt to force you out of cover. If you are met with any of these devices, you may need to relocate and possibly improvise by performing a little run and gun or dodge. But find cover as quickly as possible. You can take on one or two of the more common weaker enemies by dispatching them rather quickly, but the combat system is not designed for a player to take advantage of acrobatics or relying on quick kills to get them out of trouble. Going solo in the Division 2 requires some patience. The enemy AI will try to frustrate you, but if you stay mindful of the location of the enemies and remember to think a step or two ahead, you will get through the majority of your encounters the first time without respawning. So that's all I have for now. I hope these tips help. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll be back soon with a new video.